Hi, how are we all today? So I've been told I'm in the precarious position of standing between you and lunch. So I'm going to be very quick and efficient with my presentation today. So let me introduce myself. My name is Kailem Anderson. I lead portfolio and engineering for Blue Planet. And Blue Planet's a division of Ciena. And essentially what Blue Planet is focused on is our software business and essentially intelligent automation. Essentially anything to do with orchestrating, dealing with inventory, federating, assuring, and driving analytics across a closed-loop automation set of scenarios. And what I wanted to do with you today was talk to you about some of our customers' experiences as they've gone on this journey of virtualizing their networks and the role that intelligent automation has played in really enabling that journey. And I thought instead of focusing on Tier 1s, we've heard a lot of case studies around Tier 1 operators today, I'd focus on some regional operators and some of the challenges they've faced on their journey towards virtualizing. So essentially my presentation today is titled, Leading Regional Operators Leveraging Intelligent Automation for Agility and Industry Leadership. Let's dive into the presentation. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's backtrack a little bit and look at what the journey that our customers have been on with regards to virtualization. So in these very halls about 7 years ago, essentially network function virtualization and SDN was cooked up, okay, by a set of global leading CSPs who really built the introductory white paper. Fast forward that a few years, we had multiple leading Tier 1 carriers really declare their intentions publicly to transform their networks and really embark on this journey of network function virtualization. The likes of AT&T with their Domain 2.0 strategy, Vodafone with Ocean, Telefonica, Verizon, to name a few. And all these projects were backed by significant resources that were really focused on transformation. Play that forward a little bit further, and really what we started to see was broader industry collaboration start to play out with key standards bodies and open source projects really step into this. Things like Etsy's zero-touch networking services management framework, TM Forum and their open API initiatives, and MEF's LSO type initiatives, all focused on really providing a blueprint for how to deal with network function virtualization, SDN, and the lifecycle aspects associated of it. So, what does that mean? Well, essentially, regional operators have picked up this blueprint and essentially taken advantage of it now, and they're moving fast. And one of the key things with the regional operators, as they look to virtualize their network, obviously they don't have the resources that the large Tier 1s do. But they also aren't as monolithic in terms of their infrastructure, and they don't have as much legacy. So what we're seeing is a lot of the regional operators innovate and operationalize their deployments of NFV and SDN much more quickly. What I like to say is these regional operators are really taking on board the mantra of think big, start small, and move fast. And they're really looking to the over-the-top players, the cloud providers, for the user experience that they want to provide to their customers. They want to deliver a cloud-like experience to their network, really taking the scenarios of Netflix, Apple, Tesla as examples on the experience they want to deliver to their customers for their network functions. Ultimately, they want to differentiate and they want to disrupt through customer experience. But let's acknowledge, the regional operators, they have their specific set of requirements, and those requirements are somewhat different from your traditional Tier 1 carriers. Let me sort of elaborate on a few of them. Firstly, the regional carriers really want open, standards-based and componentized-based solutions. They don't want to be locked into, particularly from an automations strategy and a transformation perspective, into a full-stack vendor. They want that flexibility. They want to own and control their own infrastructure. And that's why open and standards-based is really important. A consistent way to communicate northbound into the OSS, consistent way to communicate southbound into the network elements. And componentized solutions are really important to them, okay? Being able to take best-of-breed components from the vendors they select, be able to integrate that into open source initiatives that are important to them via standards. Second thing that's really important to regional carriers is this concept of DevOps tools and SDKs, essentially being able to build on top of their infrastructure via a programmable model. Again, not being beholden to a particular vendor. They grew up over the years having to deal with full stack vendors who would push change requests upon them for every little change they wanted to have in their network. They want that control back. They want to be able to build on top of a programmable infrastructure the services they want their customers to consume it. And then the final piece that's really important is this concept of embracing an ecosystem-based approach. A lot of the regional carriers, they acknowledge that a lot of the new technology domains, they don't have skills in. So they want to partner with ecosystem providers who can help them accelerate their time to market and ultimately help them get to market more quickly. Ultimately, the requirements associated with regional carriers is really looking to change the status quo, differentiate and disrupt. The other thing that's really important as regional carriers really embark on this virtualization journey and leveraging intelligent automation to facilitate that journey is they don't want a big bang approach. They don't want large transformations. That equals risk to them. They want an incremental approach as to how they roll out network function virtualization and particularly their automation strategy that sits on top of that. What I would essentially summarize is you can break down that roadmap to intelligent automation built around 3 key pillars. The first one is visibility. As I said earlier, you can't automate what you can't see. The starting point for any regional operator that I've seen is really to gain visibility into their network, and visibility from 2 dimensions. The first one is federating the information from the various data silos they have. Like everyone, they've got inventory, network management systems, all these data silos out there. Consolidate that, federate that information into a global view that can drive as a baseline for automation. The second key point is this concept of multi-layer, multi-domain visibility in the network. Being able to provide a view from an operational perspective in terms of what's going on from a fault and performance up and down the layers and being able to correlate those metrics together, be able to baseline what's going on. Once you've got the visibility in the network, then you can use that information, that telemetry, to really drive global insights using a combination of predictive analytics, machine learning and artificial intelligence. Be able to identify prescriptive trends and then implement policies against that so that you can action them. Essentially implement the software controls to be able to drive closed-loop automation. And we've seen these 3 phases consistently be the blueprint for rolling out intelligent automation for regional carriers. Ultimately, it aligns around this vision of what I like to call the adaptive network. Pull the information from the infrastructure, the telemetry, use that to identify prescriptive insights, implement policy controls against that, and then push that back into the infrastructure. So let me now that I've given a little bit of background in terms of some of the key requirements of regional carriers, let me give you 3 key case studies in terms of carriers that have embarked on this virtualization journey and how they've leveraged intelligent automation to really enable that shift. First carrier is Windstream, based in North America. Second operator is Neutrona, who's predominantly focused in Latin America. And the third one, Vocus, is in my part of the world in Australia and New Zealand. Let me start with Windstream and their journey towards SD-WAN services orchestration and automation. So if the people aren't familiar with Windstream, who are they? They're essentially a top 10 CSP in the USA. As I said, really servicing that East Coast corridor predominantly. Okay? They provide optical, Ethernet and business services to their customers, and they had an intention of really delivering a cloud-based experience to their customers. What were some of their challenges? Well, first of all, they acknowledged that automation was critical to their overall business. So they've been on a journey for the last few years, firstly automating their optical network, and then stepping that up to automate their Ethernet network. And now they're on this journey of really automating their business services, with the predominant focus being on SD-WAN. And their problem statement was very simple. When they embarked on this SD-WAN journey, their business processes and how they fulfilled that service was essentially manual. Add on top of that they had a multi-vendor SD-WAN solution because their enterprise customers kept pushing additional SD-WAN vendors upon them, and that started to add a little bit more complexity. Add on top of that they wanted to be able to successfully provision and orchestrate the underlay network with the overlay network so that they could really harness the power of their solution. Added a bit more complexity. Throw on top of that they wanted to basically have network functions that could wrap around their SD-WAN solution so that they could deliver things like virtual firewalls in the cloud with potentially content filtering on-prem, added a bit more complexity again in terms of what needed to be delivered to their customers. So they launched their SD-WAN offers initially as a manual service, and they very quickly identified, hey, this wasn't a sustainable model. Okay? Let me give you an example of the complexity associated with it. They would take a work order from a customer to go execute an SD-WAN service. That would have to get decomposed down to 250 manual inputs. Okay? There was 12 swivel chairs to basically be able to turn on that service, and many, many hours of human labour to go make it happen. Really wasn't a sustainable model for them. Okay? The challenges as a byproduct of that, very simple. Very slow process in terms of turning up new SD-WAN customers due to the underlay, overlay, and then service chaining complexity that they had to manually provision. Because it was manual, the OpEx costs were high, and there was a significant staff burden associated with that. Throw on top of that because it was manual, there was a lot of errors by people keying in the wrong configurations into the various NMSs, and it really wasn't an optimal customer experience in all. So they identified that this wasn't sustainable. So what was the solution? Very simply, the solution was to implement an abstraction layer between their OSS and essentially their programmable network. A multi-domain services orchestration solution that would essentially take the work orders northbound and then decompose that and coordinate the fulfillment of that work order across their underlay network with their overlay network, and then the service chaining of VNFs that were wrapped around that SD-WAN solution, all done in a coordinated way. Essentially providing automated resource discovery, services fulfillment, and assurance in a coordinated way for their end customers. And it was done in an open and standards-based way, leveraging a lot of the standards I talked about earlier. What was the net benefit of this? Significant for this customer, okay? They reduced their manual inputs down from 250 to 6, okay? They went from 12 swivel chairs down to 4. And there was an order of magnitude improvement in terms of the labour that they had to throw at the fulfillment of their SD-WAN solution. Okay? These are real tangible inputs and outputs. What was the result? Okay, very simply, by implementing an orchestration layer that did that abstraction, okay, there was a 98% reduction in manual inputs, significant reduction in OpEx, an 80% faster services fulfillment process, improving time to revenue and time to cash by an order of magnitude. Okay? Ultimately, there was an increased customer satisfaction, and they were able to implement advanced services on top of their SD-WAN solution they couldn't traditionally monetize because the complexity was too much. Again, tangible OpEx and CapEx outputs that could be measured that really showed how the future mode of operation differentiated and added value compared to their manual processes. Let me move to the second use case, okay, which is Neutrona. And this use case is very much focused around the concept of intent-based MPLS services automation. So who is Neutrona? Well, Neutrona is a leading carrier, predominantly focused in Latin America, but with operations in North America also. And they provided essentially carrier-neutral capabilities spanning IP MPLS, SD-WAN, private cloud connect services, Ethernet, essentially to other CSPs and Fortune 500 companies. Okay? The problem statement here was really simple. Okay? Neutrona had been delivering MPLS services for quite a while. Okay? And they were doing it manually in terms of the setup. Okay? So they were essentially manually calculate the route paths and stitching together MPLS services across their regional networks. And that worked okay for them, right? For standard services. But as their customers got more sophisticated, started asking for more differentiated MPLS services, protected services, enhanced SLAs, unique route paths, that model of manually provisioning and fulfilling the customer request started to break down. Okay? Things got a lot more complex. That resulted in turn-up errors due to manual provisioning, and essentially them not being able to offer these differentiated services that their customers were asking for. The impact of that was they couldn't generate the revenue in terms of driving value add. So what was the solution, essentially? Twofold, okay? So the first one was they implemented what was called a route optimization and analysis layer that essentially provided the inputs that the customers wanted and then basically did the optimization of the route paths and recommendations of the route paths. That was then fed to a multi-domain services orchestration solution that would essentially automate the end-to-end services turn up across the MPLS core. So essentially, route optimization that identifies the path computation and the preferred paths based on a set of inputs, and then the implementation and the pushing of that to the network from an orchestration perspective. Essentially, what that meant is that they could deliver automated computation of MPLS LSPs based on explicit route objects. Okay? The final piece that was critically important to them is this solution of route optimization and analysis with an orchestrator could then allow them to do continuous monitoring of their MPLS network and explicitly the TE tunnels. So if there was, for example, a lag congestion happening across one of the tunnels, that could be identified, okay? That could trigger an optimization function in the route optimization analysis engine to look at the next preferred route, and then that would go into the orchestration engine to go provision that alternate route for the customer. What was the output of that? Reduced time to revenue. So instead of them taking months to calculate the route paths and provision the service for the customers, that got compressed down into minutes. There was overall operational simplicity and less OpEx required to support the service, and ultimately that led to happier customers. And then the final use case I want to talk about is Vocus, who's a leading carrier, Tier 2 regional carrier in Australia and New Zealand. Okay? Their problem statement was very unique. This company had grown through acquisition. So on the surface, they may have looked like one company, but essentially under the covers, they were 6 to 8 different networks, very siloed. So this company had declared their intention to deliver a cloud-like experience to their customers and essentially transform, okay? The problem was they had all these silos that were really driving a lot of legacy and stopped them from being able to evolve to that future state that they wanted to go to. So they had legacy silos, they had inventory and data silos within each one of those networks, they had operations teams focused down in each individual network, and they really weren't able to leverage the power of their assets broadly across their company. So they acknowledged the problem and they knew that there wasn't a manual way in which they could deal with that. So what was the solution? A fewfold. Well, first of all, they implemented a federation capability, an inventory federation capability to break down a lot of the silos that were in each one of their networks, right? They had information in legacy inventory systems, in NMSs, in EMSs, pull all that up and federate that view, and then federate it one step higher across all their networks. So they had a global view of their service inventory. Second piece they did, again, was implement this abstraction layer, a multi-domain orchestration capability that took work orders from essentially their OSS, decomposed that, and then provided a consistent abstraction layer across all their various networks. Third piece they did was essentially try and break down their NOC silos, okay, by being able to pull up all the alarm information that was resulting in each NOC looking in their own little world, federate that alarm information to provide a set of global views as to the performance and assurance of their unified network. These three areas alone resulted in broader end-to-end visibility across their multi-layer, multi-vendor, siloed network that was historically the case, and provided essentially a broader view for the operations team so that they could start consolidating those NOC functions. Throw on top of that they could now start their cloud-based journey in providing a unified experience to their customers, and it's really embarked them on this NFV and SD-WAN automation approach. So in summary, 3 things I really want to highlight for you today. The first one is automation, intelligent automation is not an option for any customer really embarking on a virtualization journey, on an NFV or an SDN journey. It's absolutely critical. It's a mandate. They go hand in hand. The second one is, as you embark or as regional operators have embarked on intelligent automation, it provides the ability to break down the silos in that company. There's traditional silos between network, IT, and operations. These intelligent automation solutions help bridge that gap to allow all three of those groups within a company to have visibility on what's going on. Very powerful. And then the third area I'd really flag for you today, we have a booth here at this event. If any of those use cases were of interest to you, or you would like to see demonstrations of orchestration, inventory, or federation, or route optimization, please come by the Blue Planet booth. We'd love to give you a demonstration, show you the capabilities that we've been talking about in these case studies today. Hopefully you found this useful. I know I've run a bit over time. Thanks for your time today, guys. Really appreciate it.